Hey everybody, thank you for joining this video. I want to cover tonight the topic of crises. Hopefully we can help you to consider those crises and what to do in the event you have one before that crisis comes. And maybe you find yourself in a crisis now. That's why you found this video. Hopefully I can give you a couple of pointers that's going to help you walk through this. So I kind of categorize crisis in two different levels, like an emergency and then a real genuine crisis. For an emergency, I would qualify that as something where you have the money to pay for the problem, but it just was an unplanned. I often use car trouble as one of those things because it seems so relatable. It happens to all of us. You know, maybe you're on a trip, your car breaks down or you have an accident. Now you got to be able to get back home. That's an emergency. You're going to use your emergency fund for that. If you're a follower of Dave Ramsey or if you've watched any of the other videos, you know that one of the things you've got to do is have an emergency fund in place. That's 3 to 6 months of your expenses. And your expenses are going to be the 4 things we're going to cover here and what to pay in a crisis. So let's jump back to that example where you were on your trip. Try to slow down how much you're spending in the crisis and really think through, minimize what you're buying and spending on in the middle of this. I know for me, if I have a car that's broken down, now I'm going to be super tempted to just make a rash decision and get it taken care of. Well, that's really not going to be the best decision. What I need to do is spend the least I can to solve the problem right now. I might rent a car. I might call someone I know if I'm not too far from home, have them come pick me up. Or if it's something that's repairable, find out what the least I can do to repair it and get on the road. I know for myself, it is very easy to be irrational. So it is very important that you are prepared for this and have thought this stuff through before the moment comes. Now let's talk about real, genuine crises and what that might look like. For me, a crisis would be a health issue, maybe a hospitalization, job layoff, absolutely a real crisis, maybe something happens with one of the kids. Those are all very real crises and you have to think about what to do. Let's say you're in the middle of a crisis, it's going to be a few weeks, maybe a few months. I want you to stop your spending and I want you to narrow it down to 4 things we're buying. We're only buying 4 things. First thing here is going to be to buy food. You can pretend you're not going to buy food, but at the end of the day, you're always going to buy food. Second thing here is going to be to make sure you pay your utilities. If your house is warm and your lights are on, it is much, much easier to fight. But, caution here, this is not where you buy $180 worth of cable every month. That's on pause. That's canceled. We're not doing that. Even a cell phone, we're going down to the basic. We're doing the least we can do because we've got a crisis to handle, and right now is not the time for entertainment. We got to be working. Third thing here is to pay your rent or your mortgage. You don't want to get into jeopardy on your housing during the middle of a crisis. And then the last thing, number 4, is going to make sure that you keep your transportation in place. This is where I'm talking about emergency is a car trouble. A crisis is where you just need to keep that car on the road. You're making sure that if you have a car payment, you continue to pay your payment. And if you have insurance, you got to make sure you keep it insured. Otherwise, you could lose the vehicle or your driving privileges. Okay, so those are the 4 things that we're going to continue to make sure we cover, even in the middle of a very dire crisis. What are the next things we need to do? Now we need to look around and say, what do I need to do to move from crisis on back to normal life? And let's use the example of a job layoff. In the middle of that, you can get some extra side jobs. You can do some other hustles to continue to bring some income in and drag out how much of your emergency fund you're using. Or if you don't have an emergency fund, how much you're charging to your credit card. You really want to keep that minimum. Here's the things that you're not paying in the middle of a crisis. Typically it would be your credit card, non-mortgage debt. You don't want to be paying for anything that you possibly don't have to pay for. Maybe even you have some kind of a home security plan. You might let some of those things lapse while you're dealing with your actual crisis because you want your emergency funds to last as long as possible. I know someone who got themselves into a little bit of trouble around work and they ended up having to take a 6-month emergency fund and make it last a year. And that was really difficult for them. But they took this on very seriously, and they stuck to their four walls, and they were able to make it stretch the time period they needed. Other things to consider here is if you are in the middle of a hospitalization and you receive some charity, make sure that those charity dollars are going towards either your four walls or your actual hospital bills. Using charity dollars to pay for your cable package really is not going to be a good look. And you don't necessarily want to be hesitant to reach out for help. I know it's not always easy to admit that you need some help, but having some things like a GoFundMe or reaching out to your church, maybe just some friends are helping you out, it's very important that you are able to accept that help, because it is part of the human experience to help each other, and we want to make sure that we are taking good care of each other. I hope that this video has helped you if you're in the middle of a crisis. I hope that you found that you are able to be a little bit better prepared now as you go forward. If you have any other questions or suggestions for future videos, don't hesitate to comment down below. For now, this is me signing off.